Council members, participants, we are now live.
Good morning. Before we begin the public hearing, I will make the following announcement. Due to the continuing threat to public health from COVID-19, City Council committees are currently meeting remotely. We are using Microsoft Teams to make these remote hearings possible. Instructions for how the public may view and offer public testimony at public hearings of council committees are included in the public hearing notices that are published in the Daily News, Inquirer, and Legal Intelligencer prior to the hearings and can also be found on phlcouncil.com. I now note that the hour has come. Mr. Golden, will you please call the roll to take attendance? Members that are present in attendance will please indicate that you are present when your name is called. Also, please say a few brief words when responding so that your image will be displayed on screen when you speak.
Councilmember Johnson. Councilmember Gilmore Richardson.
Good morning, Mr. Chair. Good morning, colleagues. I am present.
Councilmember Jones. Councilmember Jones. Councilmember Vaughn. Vice Chair Squilla.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and colleagues. Present.
Chair Driscoll.
Present.
Thank you.
Thank you. A quorum of the committee is present, and this hearing is now called to order. This is the public hearing of the Committee on Licenses and Inspections regarding Bill number 230271. Mr. Golden, will you please read the title of the resolution?
Absolutely. Before that, I see Councilmember Curtis Jones might be back in the meeting. I just want to get him marked down as here if he is.
I'm also present too.
Thank you, Councilmember Phillips. Councilmember Jones.
I note that Councilmember Jones is muted.
All right, I will move on until we get response there to reading the title of the bill. So the bill is entitled Bill number 230271, amending section 9-105 of the Philadelphia Code entitled Penalties, and amending chapter 9-4400 of the Philadelphia Code entitled Responsible Business Operations to further define nuisance businesses, provide for an additional enforcement and penalties, and make certain technical changes, all under certain terms and conditions.
Thank you. Before we begin to hear testimony from the witnesses we have for today, everyone who has been invited to the meeting to testify should be aware that this public hearing is being recorded. Because the hearing is public, participants and viewers have no reasonable expectation of privacy. By continuing to be in this meeting, you are consenting to being recorded. Additionally, prior to recognizing members for the questions or comments they have for the witnesses, I will note for the record at this time that we will use the chat feature available in Microsoft Teams to allow members to signify that they wish to be recognized. In order to comply with the Sunshine Act, the chat feature must only be used for this purpose. Mr. Golden, will you please call the first panel we have to testify this morning on resolution number 230112.
Chairman,
Yes.
before it testimony, could I provide some brief remarks?
Councilmember Phillips, yeah, you're on.
Thank you. Good morning, Philadelphia. Good morning, colleagues. Good morning, Chairman Driscoll. I'm glad to be having this hearing on my bill, which will revamp how the city enforces nuisance business regulations. We wrote this bill in coordination with the Department of License and Inspections, the Police Department, the Health Department, and the Department of Commerce, who all support it. Among several things, it builds off the existing regulatory structure by holding business owners accountable for nuisance behavior, regardless of
Excuse me.
whether the.
Chairman,
Yes,
Chairman Phillips.
yes. Hello?
Leader Jones?
Okay, I'll keep going. It holding business owners accountable for nuisance behavior, regardless of whether the conduct took place during operating hours, because much of it occurs after hours, creating a more reasonable threshold for being labeled a nuisance business, allowing both the police department and L&I to issue intent to cease operation notices, and increasing the current $300 fine for nuisance businesses to $2,000. Now, as we know, nuisance businesses adversely affect the quality of life in the city. And in the 9th District in particular, we have seen this incredibly impact our neighborhoods. So this is an important issue for our communities, not just in the 9th District, and but around the city of Philadelphia. And I'm looking forward to hearing the testimony on this bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Phillips.
Mr. Chair, would you like me to read the title of the first panel now?
I would.
The first panel comes from the administration with Fran Healy, Police Staff Inspector and Special Advisor to the Police Commissioner, giving testimony, and Sarah Adamo, Legislative Affairs Manager and Zoning Administrator for the Department of License and Inspections, and Karen Fegley, Deputy Commerce Director, here to field any questions that members of the committee have.
Good morning. Are you connected and ready to proceed?
I am, sir, yes, from the police department.
Please state your name for the record and proceed with your testimony.
Thank you. Good morning, Chairman Driscoll and other members of the Committee on License and Inspections. My name is Francis Healy, and I'm the Special Advisor to the Police Commissioner. First, on behalf of Commissioner Atlaw, thank you for allowing the department the opportunity to present testimony regarding Bill number 230271, which is amending City Code 9-4400 relating to responsible business operations. First, I'd like to thank Councilperson Bass on the record for originally introducing 9-4400 to the City Code. This ordinance has allowed the department to take an active role in abating many nuisance establishments throughout the city, and we remain very grateful for this helpful tool. The bill being offered here today, or the amendments or bill being offered here today, are meant to expand the scope of this good work and to provide the police with more authority to actively engage in the nuisance abatement process. My district captains are on the front lines when dealing with nuisance locations, so this bill will provide my captains with the authority to engage nuisance establishments much sooner and more effectively. For these reasons, the police department fully supports this bill. As you know, in the last several years, the PPD, L&I, Health Department, and our state agencies, under the leadership of the Law Department, have come together to address nuisance activities in a systematic and unified manner throughout the city. This collaboration has created synergy, and we have seen the benefits with respect to short dumping and the civil prosecutions by the Law Department. And as Vice Chair Squilla has recently became aware, this collaboration allowed us to work with L&I for the PPD to enforce certain Title IX offenses regarding auto repair shops using public streets and sidewalks. The messaging just went out to my commanders last week to begin enforcement on that. So it's this collaboration that allowed all relevant city agencies to come together as a team to work with Councilman Phillips and his staff to develop this bill. So in closing, I would like to thank the Councilperson Phillips and his staff for working with the police department, the Department of License and Inspections, and the Law Department in further defining 9-4400. This bill will, in its current form, will reduce the number of nuisance locations throughout the city and will definitely increase the quality of life for those affected. This concludes my testimony. I'm happy to answer any questions, sir.
Thanks for your testimony. Are there any questions or comments from members of the committee for Mr. Healy?
Mr. Chairman?
Okay.
Mr. Chairman?
Leader Jones?
Yes, I had technical difficulties. I'd like to be recorded as being present.
Duly noted.
Thank you.
Hearing no questions from members for this panel, Mr. Golden, will you please call the second panel we have to testify this morning on bill number 230271?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Various business chambers will make up the second panel, including Ryan Spack, Project Manager for the Small Business Services for the University City District, Will Carter, VP of Local Government Affairs for the Philadelphia Chamber of Commerce, or the Chamber of Commerce for Greater Philadelphia, and Regina Hairston, President and CEO of the African American Chamber of Commerce of Pennsylvania.
Good morning. Are you connected and ready to proceed?
I am.
Please state your name for the record and proceed with your testimony.
Sure. My name is Ryan Spack. I'm the project manager for small business services for the University City District, and I wear I'm in a very unique position, and that position is that I'm also a property owner and real estate developer outside of the University City District, and so this law has many benefits for both the small businesses that rent space in my buildings, as well as the small businesses that I serve through the University City District. We have come to find on more than one occasion over the course of the last several years that the business owners, where they have allowed for nuisance activities to take place, we have found that those business owners have not been engaged the way that they need to be, because the prior law did not give the departments the power necessary to change their actions. It was good in theory, but its application did not function properly. And the best example that I can give is at the intersection of 52nd and Larchwood, where one of our buildings has seen 4 shootings over the course of the last 3 years. We've had 2 homicides. I must commend the Commerce Department for assisting us in rebuilding the storefronts of those buildings through their storefront improvement program. But what is interesting is the conversations that we've had with the police district, with the local officers, with the detectives, is that all of this activity stems from one business. And the prior law that is in effect has not given that police district, as well as LNI, the tools necessary. And in reading the proposed legislation, I can tell you all that I'm incredibly supportive of this, as I see there being more tools for the police district and LNI to assist us in making our business corridors a stronger place.
Thank you for your testimony, Mr. Spack. I do want to recognize Leader Jones, I think has a question or comment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to thank the author of this bill for this kind of in-depth consideration of what we face as district council people in our respective commercial corridors. And there are many of these types of locations that attract a different type of element, a different type of quality of life concern, everything from liquor by the drink to Lucy cigarettes to drug paraphernalia. And even now with the relaxation of certain marijuana laws, edibles that our kids get a hold of. So this type of scrutiny about nuisance businesses will be universally accepted. So again, Member Phillips, thank you so very much for keeping this at the focus of this council. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Leader. If there's any other questions or comments from the members, hearing none, and no further questions from members for this panel. Mr. Golden, will you please call the third panel, which we have to testify this morning on bill number 230271?
Mr. Chair, I believe we have Will Carter and Regina Hairston to go for this panel still. So Will, if you'd like to go, if you're connected and ready.
Yes. Well, let me say I was raised right, so I will allow Regina to go first. I'm not even allowed. She should go first.
Thank you, Mr. Carter, for that.
However, if she's not on, I can go.
So, Mr. Carter, just state your name for the record and proceed.
Okay. William Carter, Vice President of Local Government Affairs for the Chamber of Commerce. Good afternoon, Chairman Driscoll and members of the Committee on License and Inspection. Once again, William Carter, Vice President of Local Government Affairs for the Chamber of Commerce for Greater Philadelphia. Just want to thank you for this opportunity to testify today. We really greatly appreciate Councilman Phillips and really all members of council for being good stewards of the quality of life in our city. We know that the best legislation comes from public-private partnerships, and we appreciate Councilman Phillips working with us and all stakeholders in crafting a bill that works for the business community and the community at large. And obviously, that's what we want to have and appreciate going forward. I will say the overwhelming majority of businesses that we represent are not the nuisance businesses. They're hardworking people who work 24/7 and create jobs in the city, and we want to continue to support them. However, we know there are some bad apples out here, and that, you know, the bad apples give a bad name to the business community at large. And so we're always willing to team with you guys in the public sector in trying to weed out those bad actors and create an economic environment here in the city that everybody can enjoy and grow and also create jobs. So thank you, Councilman Phillips, for working with us on changing the original bill and offering something that's more targeted to the businesses that are acting up. We remain steadfast in working with you and the rest of council in trying to create an environment that's going to rid our city of these type of businesses and grow our economy. And so certainly appreciate you and once again all of council in this regard. And I will wait for any questions.
I'd like to recognize Councilwoman Richardson for a question.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. And first, I wanted to thank Councilmember Phillips for this legislation and for all the work that he has done to really uplift not only the 9th Councilmanic District, but the entire city of Philadelphia since he's been in council. You all know that I've also worked on legislation around enforcement for nuisance businesses, and in particular, working to update the definition of drug paraphernalia so that we would be able to enforce against certain businesses that are selling certain things without express approval of the city of Philadelphia. What I wanted to do, though, was ask the administration several questions relative to the enforcement plan, not only for this legislation, but overall as it relates to nuisance businesses. I think that, and I know that we have a gem in our nuisance business task force and in Kristen Bray and the work of the law department, but there are many steps that need to take place before nuisance businesses get that far down the road. And I know that because we have done enforcement tours with L&I, with health, with commerce, with a ton of city departments to try to address some of these nuisance businesses in our communities. And so I wanted to know if the administration could give us sort of an overview of their overall enforcement plan for nuisance businesses. And then if they could also submit something in writing to detail the exact process. I am particularly interested in when a citizen first makes the call, whether they call 311 or if it's reported via a council office, then what steps will take place? So L&I is contacted, then how does the coordination take place? And how do we deal with businesses that after 3 strikes still are in violation of our laws? So I wanted to start there. Can the administration detail for us today on this hearing the enforcement plan for these businesses?
Councilwoman, I'm happy to step in, and I'm sure my partners can step in. Kristen Bray, I think, is on the call as well. She's actually coordinates as part of the nuisance task or nuisance committee that we have. So if I say anything incorrect, I'm sure she'll jump in and and correct me. The plan right now, I mean, this ordinance is really targeted at the business level. So the complaints would come in as they normally would. What happens now is the process, once we get those complaints, is being shifted as a result of this ordinance. So what happens is the complaints will come in as they do 311 or directly to the captains, which a lot of them come into. So the captains are identifying and targeting, I hate to use that word, but they're identifying the locations that are problematic based upon the complaints they receive. This ordinance is very strategic, or surgical, I should say, in the way that it needs to be applied. So it's not something that the average police officer in the district is going to be writing tickets on. This is something that's coordinated out of the captain's office. And I'm happy to share what I've already written before. I have a police commissioner's memorandum on this ordinance, and it's titled a nuisance abatement tool for commanders. That's the actual title of my the enforcement plan that we have. It'll be updated as a result of this ordinance, but or the amendments. But the process is the complaints come into the captain identifies those locations, and then basically you have to understand, just because nuisance is happening at a location doesn't mean that the owner is aware of it or is responsible for it. So there's a step-by-step process. There's a 3-step process, as you indicated. The first thing is, once we identify nuisance behavior happening out there, we send a first letter to notification letter to the owners of the of location, indicating, listen, you have nuisance behavior occurring at or on your location. You need to reach out to the captain. We're happy to reach with you, talk with you, and how to develop an abatement plan. If we get no response and we hit it again, we go out and get another citation. Now it used to be that the time period for citations used to be more tight. It's more now. It's 3 violations as a result of this amendment in a year. So it makes much easier for this to do this process that I'm explaining. So the first letter goes out. They don't respond. We go back out again. We cite the individuals for doing the behavior out on the location. A second time, we notify the owner. The third time is when they become, per se, a nuisance location. It has to be that third instance. That's what declares them as a nuisance. At that point in time, with this new ordinance, what we will be doing is a notice of violation will be sent by the police department, which is a change from what was done before. This actually speeds up the process for actually L&I to get involved in the overall, like I said, if there has to be a cease operations or any actions. So the police department will be directly involved in issuing those notices. Now, the important thing is you need to know the police department has centralized a lot of the nuisance stuff under Joel Dales, and we have Bob Ritchie, who's an inspector assigned to our nuisance unit. The notices of violation are basically initiation of process. So they have to be done very specifically. And like I said, what we're doing with the law department with short dumping, we're going to replicate in this process and have an individual person, investigator, developing the nexus between those locations so we can build the case. So when we hand it off to L&I, it will be in a bow for all intents and purposes.
Okay.
That's the process.
I understand. Got it. So I guess my question is, and if you can help me understand the difference, I guess my question is, you're saying that this enforcement will be done via PPD through, I guess, a special process through the captain's office, where I guess officers that the captain knows is familiar with this law. But what is the difference between this process and when a business is reported, let's say for drug paraphernalia, and it goes through L&I? Like, at what point do you all get involved?
I'll let Kristen touch on. We're all involved. We read regularly. So when those issues happen or pop up, we're all talking with each other. When we have the walkabouts and we go and hit the stores and all that for the inspections,
right,
we're all working together as a team. So as we know, that's an L&I issue. L&I issues are as much applicable for this ordinance as well. And one of the most important things there's a lot of important things in here, but I believe Kristen put in here is what makes this a nuisance as repeated or continued violations of city ordinances. So we identified a handful of offenses, but we can't capture all of them, quite frankly. And tomorrow there'll be another thing that pops up that we didn't identify. So that catch-all will catch that paraphernalia. So if a story is cited multiple times by L&I, we can then take the same actions we're doing here to do the enforcement process under 94400. And like I said, the police department, L&I, are on the same page, working together and making sure that we're not working in silos. That's the most important thing.
Right. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Okay. I'm happy to answer any questions. You want to give me a call later, I'm happy to talk to you.
Sure. It's just, I guess for me, I do have concern around a number of the businesses that we've been tracking even under the current process, and they have not been addressed. Several of them have reopened, and we've been keeping my office like a Google sheet with L&I for at least all the cases that we receive so that we know, what the action has been. And I drove past maybe two or three of the stores in the last week. I was out late in the 22nd last week, and I saw one of the stores we shut down that actually had no certification, no licensing. They had nothing, and they were reopened. And so we do report the locations, but I just want to make sure that there's an interface with L&I. I don't know if anybody from
Yes.
L&I is here that could speak to specifically drug paraphernalia and their work around the nuisance business task force work. Really, this is for L&I.
Sure. And just so you know, any list you have, please share with me, and I'm happy to incorporate it, make sure that we're all, like I said, not working in silos. I'm happy to take that information and forward it to Inspector Ritchie.
Okay, and I'll have my team send you the entire list.
Okay, thank you.
Is there anyone here from L&I, Mr. Chair?
Yes, Sarah Adamo, I believe, is on the call.
Good morning. I'm actually here today with Renee Reinhardt, and she would actually probably be the best person to address the drug paraphernalia enforcement.
This is Renee Reinhardt. I'm the code enforcement manager for the Department of Licenses and Inspections. And I can speak on our process for doing drug paraphernalia inspections. When we get a complaint, the inspector will go out to do an inspection at the location, and we'll either find that they are selling drug paraphernalia or they're not. If they are selling drug paraphernalia and they don't have zoning approval for it, an immediate cease operations is issued for the sale of the drug paraphernalia only. If the store is otherwise legal, meaning they have zoning approval for retail sales of consumer goods or food, beverages, and groceries, the store is permitted to continue to operate as they're legally zoned. Now, the drug paraphernalia cease means that they are to immediately stop selling the drug paraphernalia and remove it from the store. And we will do a follow-up inspection in 35 days to determine whether or not they're in compliance at that point with removal of the drug paraphernalia and discontinuing the sales. If upon our return, they still have drug paraphernalia present and they are still selling it, then we will issue a 10-day intent to cease for the entire business. They still have that additional 10 days to remove the drug paraphernalia and stop selling it in order to avoid the cease operations of their business.
Sure. Yes, and so, but I think my real question is timeline. Like, how long does this process take for each part in the process? And so, as a part of the written response that I'm requesting, if I could also request the actual timeline. So, first inspection, second inspection, like third inspection, coordination with the strike force or whatever type of coordination needs to take place.
I'm sorry, I forgot to mention that our initial inspection, we do coordinate with the police for assistance from the narcotics strike force. I forgot to mention that. I apologize. So they are present at the initial drug paraphernalia inspection.
Can I jump in very quickly and just add? The purpose of our centralizing an inspector and a nuisance abatement unit or a nuisance unit is for exactly what you just mentioned, the coordination of efforts. And that way they're using narcotic strike force and using the ROC chiefs if we need to use them for different inspections. So it's that coordination at that higher level out of the Special Operations Bureau is why that unit was created. It's in its infancy right now, but we are in fact developing SOPs and flow charts to ensure that all this stuff is better coordinated to the best we can do between our agencies. But that was the purpose of creating that unit, and also assigning an investigative unit or an investigative person to that unit, which is critical to actually tying. Like I said, we get a lot of paperwork, a lot of things happen out front, but how do we prove that what happened out front is actually connected to the establishment. It may sound silly for us, we all know on its face, but when law has to go in and argue these cases, they really need to establish that nexus. It's kind of like a probable cause statement in a criminal case. It's very identical. So what we're going to do is make sure that process is in place. So like, as I mentioned before, the jobs that we have packaged up and hand off to L&I and law are complete and thorough, and there's no holes in the investigations and everything's buttoned up tight. That'll help us to making sure that these cases don't walk when they go to court. So that's incredibly important. So we've dedicated the resources to that within the police department.
Okay, understood. And I have just two additional questions. One would be specifically for the L&I part of the process. What is the timeline for each step in the process? And then finally, based on everything we've heard today and knowing where we are in process, and knowing the requests that I know I've submitted and many of my colleagues have, if you all could speak to if you believe you currently have adequate staffing to address the numerous nuisance businesses that we know exist and those that we don't. And that would be for each department, for PPD, for L&I, for health, for every department that has an interface with the nuisance business process.
I'll speak on behalf of the police department. The additional adding additional people is probably not feasible. We accept all these complaints with the existing resources that we have. I think we're trying to create a synergy by creating a specialized unit. I think what's going to happen is we're going to be packaging more jobs that the law department's going to have to defend. So in essence, I do believe probably the law department is going to need more attorneys to handle these cases to make sure they're done efficiently and effectively. But I think we in the police department, we like I said, I hate to say we never want anything, but I think we can manage with the existing resources, because these complaints are existing coming into the captain's office. We just have to do a better job of organizing, coordinating, and sharing the information and collaborating, which is what we're in the process of doing. So I don't necessarily think we need more people per se, because we hire police officers. They would need to be out on the street. The administrative folks we have in the districts, I think, can handle this. With the coordination of the specialized unit that we created, I think we should be good. But we will be packaging more stuff for L&I and for the law department to process. So they may, in fact, need more, I think, would obviously need more people on that end to be able to prepare to handle the stuff that we send them.
Okay, well, that would be great, because I'll just be honest with you, because I was going out with all of the units, and I think initially we didn't have, I think we had a police officer for each one, and I'll say we really needed it when we went to the 22nd. But we hear the complaints most often that it's difficult to coordinate because they have to now have a police officer with them at the point of initial inspection. So for us, we kept hearing, based on, I guess, like lack of movement on the sheet that we've been keeping, is that it's because they have to wait on an officer to go out. So that's why I'm trying to get this clear now, because it's really not what we're being told. I'm just being honest. We're not being told.
And I'll explain where that came from. Prior to having a centralized unit under Inspector Ritchie, we would have to go to the Rock North or Rock South and figure out exactly where you guys wanted to be, and then try to coordinate getting officers there. That was a little bit of a logistical loggerhead. So what we did is Inspector Ritchie now coordinates directly with his chiefs to make sure that officers are available. Plus, he has also has officers in his office that can be used for that function as well. So that should never be an issue moving forward.
Okay, that'll be great. Okay,
and like I said, I'm happy to provide its contact information. Like I said, you're always welcome to contact me, but he's the operational person in the field that will be handling all these requests. Yep.
Okay, all right, that'll be great. Thank you.
Chair recognizes Leader Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I'll never forget being on 54th Street, going in some of our nuisance businesses there with Member Richardson. And it was almost like Elliot Ness. She was going through and making sure that things were in order. And so thank you for your constant diligence, Member Richardson, and I appreciate it. So I'm glad there is a unified way that we go into inspect stores, that there is L&I, there is the health department, and that when we approach it, everyone's looking for their piece of the puzzle, whether it's the health department and HVACs that are clogged with grease or whatever the nuisance business has going on, that we can address it and not have to come back one at a time to address it. That's number one. I appreciate it. And that is a good approach. What I'm finding is that when a lot of the stores, not all, and the Chamber of Commerce was clear that there are some bad actors, but they make it bad for everyone. That when you go into a store and they're selling Lucy's, or when you go into the store, one in my district on Market Street is selling liquor by the drink at 7 a.m. Or now, where the drug paraphernalia stores are, there's a thing called peace trees. Are you familiar with that?
Sir, was that
Anyone?
directed to me? I apologize.
Yes.
Was that direct- could you
Yes.
repeat that again? Am I familiar with what exactly?
There is a edible, a cannabis edible called peace trees that are illegally, I believe, being sold out of some of the paraphernalia stores. You have to know a code word to do that. Have you come in across any of that?
Not that one specifically, but the notion of the transition from the CBD products with the hemp, trying to masquerade that as some other stuff. I'm aware of those type of things that are narcotics. We'll investigate those as well. So if you have any of those complaints, please tell me the location, and I'll forward to Chief Inspector Clark with narcotics. But I understand, yes, people are trying to. I said hemp is legal. But you cross certain boundaries, hemp suddenly now not illegal. So there's wholly boundaries, and that's where the narcotics or folks are much better suited in identifying that than myself. But yes, I am aware. But if you have any of those locations, please share them with me.
We will. In one of my locations, young people were identified in school, and the teacher was alert enough to notice all of them had their heads down. They were very lethargic and weren't engaged in the lessons of the day. Come to find out, they were taken, all of them, to the nurse. And, once you start questioning one, they started telling what was the problem. And it was peace trees being sold out of a neighborhood store that one of them got and shared with the other students. These are 8th graders. So not only is that product illegal to be sold, but to sell it to a minor is, in addition, egregious. And so as we start to find that they're carrying on, whether it's liquor by the drink, whether it's Lucy cigarettes, whether it's drug paraphernalia, and now these kinds of edibles, it is becoming an increasing problem in parts of our district. Not to mention the illegal or non-monitored gambling machines, because they're creating an environment where you have little casinos in neighborhoods. And we have to get on top of it. I say all of this to say, and for the author of the bill, is it time that we increase fines where we can? Because in many cases, store owners believe the juice is worth the squeeze. That they're making so much money that by the time we find them, by the time we process them, by the time we return for compliance, they've made enough to pay our fines. So I'm thinking that we need to really layer on some of these things so that it becomes a deterrent for that kind of continued bad actor operation. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
The chair recognizes Councilmember Squilla.
Think you're on mute.
Councilmember Squilla? We'll move to Councilman.
Sorry, there you go. I'm sorry. I was, for some reason, it kept asking me for my password to get back in. Maybe, Fran Haley, we have other issues, and I think the concern is how do we coordinate the efforts between LNI and the police department for other enforcement measures. We've had a hard time, whether it's having 3 CVNs, how we designate a property a nuisance property. Does that then allow us to remove a license? And we're having this issue with not this bill in particular, but sort of a short-term rental version of it where the police have been there numerous times, have had issues, had shootings, and then there's still an issue of how LNI can coordinate with the police to then remove the business license. Is that something that would be worked out in this model also?
Yes, absolutely. What we did in this model is we distinguished the definition between I think we call it a critical nuisance business and a chronic nuisance business. Okay, and what happened is a chronic nuisance business is those locations where the owner has to be notified once, twice, and on the third offense, then he becomes a per se nuisance. If there is an establishment, this is what we've had or what we've seen over years, is that violence happens at these locations. However, 94400, the previous version, did not have anything to do with violence. Okay, we all understand that violence emanates from nuisance behaviors a lot of times, but there's really nothing we could do. The violence, okay, it was associated in and around the bar, but it wasn't part of 94400. We have changed that with this amendment, thanks to Councilman Phillips. What happens now, if there is a serious offense and they're defined as homicide, murder, aggravated assault, rape, or sexual assault, that is automatically, like I said, it may not, the business may not be directly responsible, but the fact that that happened on or in their premises, they are per se chronic or a serious or a critical nuisance business. At that point, I'm immediately notifying them with the intent to cease, and they're being fined. Now, the goal here is really to get people to come into the police department, come up with an abatement plan, but we're no longer going to sit back and just let this violence happen and not have any action. This gives the police department an aggressive tool to actually step in when those violent acts happen, and we can tie it to the establishment. I just want to be clear, if there's a shooting in a parking lot and there's 15 businesses there, we have to investigate and actually tie that incident back to the bar or to the location. And that's the purpose of assigning a detective to this new unit we created, because we just can't throw paper at LNI and expect them to put it all together. We need to make the investigation, make it tight. And like I said, those now violent incidents are now per se critical nuisance businesses that will now be able to take immediate action on that we otherwise could not have. That's a huge win in this ordinance.
So now that's more or less a two-prong approach, right? It would be either a chronic nuisance business, which is a serious major event that happened there, and rape, murder, shooting, whatever, and then you have just a nuisance business property that could use the 3 CVN model.
Yeah, I just think you had it backwards. It'd be the chronic nuisance would be the ones with, the 3 strikes and you're out.
Oh,
it's the critical nuisance would be the ones that are involving violence. But you're correct. It's a two-prong approach, so we can now attack those other locations much sooner and more efficiently.
But LNI and the police have to coordinate. We have to make sure those CVNs are issued, correct? Like, are the district captains aware of this and other folks aware of it, or is it just going to be through Inspector Ritchie and through the nuisance business task force?
No, Inspector Ritchie will be coordinating with the district captains to ensure that he gets the paperwork he needs for the chronic nuisance stuff. That's where the district captain's really going to go out there and build the case. When it's those serious incidents, I believe it's Inspector Ritchie's unit, and that's the goal. We'll be able to process those notices of violation on behalf of the districts. So the districts, I don't expect the districts to be drafting notices of violation all over the place. That needs to be very consistent, uniform, and the law department will be involved to make sure that it's actually worded correctly and filed correctly. So yeah, that'll be done out of the one unit, but it'll be able to be done within days, a day or so, as necessary once these incidents happen. So we'll be able to take immediate action that we otherwise can't today. So that's a huge win, but it'll be coordinated. Inspector Ritchie will be coordinating the entire process to make sure the captains are trained, instructed on how to use the tools we already have. I already have a directive out there, but he's hammering it home. And like I said, we're waiting to change the directive based upon the approval of this amendment here today to make it even tighter.
All right, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
The leader recognizes Councilmember Phillips.
Thank you, Chairman Driscoll. I wanted to raise an inquiry around the 35-day follow-up that Renee mentioned earlier. Once a business has been identified as a nuisance business, there's a 35-day follow-up to see if they're in compliance. I wanted to get a sense of whether or not we can be more flexible with having a very strong type of deadline timeline of which that would happen. Because one of the things I was concerned about is that, oftentimes the nuisance business, if they know that you're coming back out in 35 days, they may have their act together within those 35 days. And then on the 36th day, back to normal, back to what they were doing. And I just I think that for me, I was hoping that we can have something more random as opposed to, by the 35th day, they already know it. They know it's coming. I'd rather for it to be more random to see if they actually took the violation into more into serious consideration, because otherwise this can be something that people just do because it's like their parents caught them, and then they got to come back 35 days later because they know that they're to get out of trouble, they got to do the right thing. And so just want to do it where they feel like they actually are doing it because they want to do it the right way. So would anyone for L&I care to comment on that enforcement part?
This is Renee Reinhardt again. So the 35 days is the due process. We have to give them an opportunity to comply. We have to give them an opportunity to be able to appeal the violation. But I do want to clarify that just because a business is, we receive a complaint that a business is selling drug paraphernalia, that doesn't qualify them as a nuisance business. And I'm not sure, that might not be understood. So the complaint itself is just like any other complaint that we get for things that might be going on at a property. We go and we do an inspection to determine whether or not the complaint is valid, but that doesn't necessarily categorize them as a nuisance business. That's a separate process.
Okay.
So,
yeah, go ahead.
Can I just jump in real quickly and just add something to that? In addition to the unscheduled, as part of Inspector Ritchie's responsibility is setting up a unified, for lack of a better word, a walkthrough in certain areas where there's problems. So we are doing random inspections with L&I, Health, and the police there to support and back them up. So we do them regularly. I think we're doing, I have to double check. I believe they're being done once a month or once every other month. So there is that element of kind of surprise. So people need to be on their toes.
Sure.
And I forget the second part, what I was just going to mention, what we were just talking about.
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I lost my train of thought. I'm getting old.
Oh, man. And no, so let me, I'll go forth and ask the next question as you try to regain, what you were about to say, but no, that was good input. I wanted to get a better understanding of are we equipped to do nighttime nuisance business reviews at random, also weekend business reviews at random as well, and what can we, if not, what can we do in this budget cycle to help with doing more random late evening, I'm talking about like 10, 11, 12 o'clock at night, as well as weekend work.
I will say they do coordinate, and they do go out after hours. I don't know how far out they go, but I do know we do go after hours because it makes no sense doing an inspection at 9 a.m. in the morning when everybody's sleeping. So we understand that, but they are coordinated on the weekend as well because that isn't the heightened time. So we try to coordinate at the high activity time without incurring additional overtime for other units. For the police department, it's somewhat easy when we're 24/7 operation. But all our partners, L&I Health, have been very receptive in rescheduling their folks for these walkarounds when we have them. But I don't know how late they go to. I can double check and follow up on that for you.
Yeah, that would be really helpful because oftentimes what I hear from residents is that we come out particularly at the times that they want to act appropriately, and the late evening weekend times, as you mentioned, are the most busy in terms of activity that should not be present in the neighborhood. During the day, some do a great job with hiding what's really going on in their business. So just wanted to make note of that for the record.
I can answer that question if I can. We have,
Please, Mary, thank you.
L&I does have a dedicated team that goes out on weekends. It's the nuisance property unit. We do nighttime inspection on weekends, Friday nights, Saturday nights. There's no limit to the hours the inspectors work on those units. So we do have nighttime inspections that we do randomly.
Gotcha. So
and
our
the police are
office,
available to assist.
yeah. So if our offices have received any serious complaints about particular businesses, we can identify them and send them to your way, and you can, find a way that your office can put it on the schedule to look at.
Absolutely.
All right. Thank you, Renee. Appreciate that.
Hearing no further questions from members for these panels, Mr. Golden, will you please call the third panel we have to testify this morning on bill number 230271?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Our final panel today comes from Community Development Corporations. We will have Andy Toy, Policy Director for Philadelphia Association of Community Development Corporations, testifying next.
Good morning. Are you connected and ready to proceed? I am aware that Mr. Toy had another engagement after the 11
Hello?
o'clock hour.
Hello.
Please state your name for the record and proceed with your testimony.
Oh, hi. This is Andy Toy from Philadelphia Association of Community Development Corporations, or PACDC. Thank you for your patience. I'm in Harrisonburg trying to get onto their Wi-Fi and didn't work, so I'm doing this by phone.
Well, thank you. Thanks for participating.
Yeah, so should you just go ahead?
Yes, please.
Okay, sorry. Good morning, Chairman Driscoll, Vice Chair Driscoll, and City Council Licenses Inspections Committee members. My name is Andy Toy, and I'm the Policy Director for the Philadelphia Association of Community Development Corporations, or PACDC. Thank you for the opportunity to testify before the L&I Committee in support of Bill number 230271 that will enable the city to better regulate or shut down businesses that have negative impacts upon communities. We at PACDC have been working with our CDC members, the city, and many others for years to improve our neighborhood commercial corridors. Our work includes a regular commercial corridor working group that meets to address corridor issues, identify best practices, and find resources to support the ongoing work. Out of this effort, PACDC initiated a problem-solving learning lab a couple years ago, focusing on nuisance businesses on corridors that were having a negative impact, including increasing crime, scaring away customers, and generally lowering the quality of life in the community. Unfortunately, our proposal for more direct connections to commercial corridor managers most familiar with nuisance business on their corridors to the city's nuisance business review process was rebuffed. We did present the city with lists of problem sites and businesses and believe that while these additional tools and clarifications that are proposed are positive, there is still a need for more proactive enforcement and collaboration. Either way, our hope is that sharpening and broadening the tools, in this case better defining nuisance businesses and allowing better enforcement and penalties, will make it easier to address these issues that are causing harm to our communities across the city. We do need well-written laws and effective enforcement. We have one main concern about the language of the bill related to Chapter 9-4401 3J definition of nuisance behavior. That is the, quote, use of sidewalk for sale or rental of goods, unquote. In many cases, in many instances, those owning stores will put items out to sell to attract customers. The best example is a fruit and produce store that puts some of its fresh produce on a part of the sidewalk in front of its store to sell. This is very different from repairing or selling cars on the sidewalk, so we hope there might be some clarification or nuance in the language for store owners who are only using the sidewalks in front of their buildings to sell what they're selling within their property. Again, we appreciate the opportunity to testify and applaud Councilman Phillips and City Council for addressing this serious issue. Thank you, Andy Toy. Hello?
Thank you for your testimony.
Yep, thank you. Appreciate the time.
Are there any questions or comments from the members for Mr. Toy? Hearing no further questions from members for this panel, and there being no other panels to testify, we will take a brief break to connect members of the public that wish to testify on the resolution before the committee today.
Thank you.
Mr. Golden, will you please call the first public commenter we have to testify this morning on the bill before the committee today?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There have been no members of the public signed up to testify, so we are ready to proceed.
So there being no further questions from members of the committee and no other witnesses to testify, I will ask if there are anyone else present in this hearing whose name we have failed to call and that wishes to offer testimony on the resolution being considered today. Hearing none, I want to thank the panels and the witnesses for their participation today. We value your opinions. I now invite all panels and witnesses to please disconnect from the hearing before we conclude the business before the committee today. We will now pause the proceedings briefly as multiple participants leave the hearing. This concludes the public hearing of the committee. We will now go into a public meeting to consider the action to be taken on the bills before this committee today. We will now convene the public meeting. Mr. Golden, will you please call the roll to take attendance? Members that are in attendance, will you please indicate that you are present when your name is called? Also, say a brief words when responding so that your image will be displayed on screen when you speak.
Councilmember Johnson. Councilmember Gilmore Richardson.
Good morning, Mr. Chair. Good morning, colleagues. I am present.
Councilmember Jones. Councilmember Jones. Councilmember Vaughn.
Mr. Chairman, I am present.
Noted. Thank you. Vice Chair Squilla.
Good morning, Mr. Chair. Present.
And Chair Driscoll.
Present. The chair recognizes Councilmember Squilla for a motion on the amendment to Bill number 230271.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I offer an amendment to Bill number 230271. A copy of the amendment has been circulated to all members of the committee, and I move that amendment to Bill number 230271 be approved.
Second.
Councilmember Jones seconds the motion. It has been moved and properly seconded that the amendment to bill number 230271 be approved. All those in favor of the motion will signify by saying aye. Those opposed.
Aye.
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 The ayes have it. The motion carries and the amendment to bill number 230271 has been approved. The chair recognizes Councilmember Squilla for a motion on bill number 230271 as amended.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move that bill number 230271 as amended be reported from this committee with a favorable recommendation, and further move that the rules of council be suspended as to permit the first reading of this bill at our next session of council.
Second.
The chair notes for the record that Councilmember Jones seconded the motion. It has been moved and properly seconded that the bill number 230271 as amended be reported from this committee with a favorable recommendation, and further move that the rules of council be suspended to permit first reading of this bill at the next session of council. All those in favor of the motion will signify by saying aye.
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 The ayes have it and the motion carries. This concludes the business before the Committee of License and Inspection today. Thank you all very much for your attendance and congratulations, Councilmember Phillips.
Thank you, Councilmember Driscoll. Thank you, Chairman. God
Thank you,
bless.
Mr. Chair. Thank you, Councilmember Phillips. Great job. Thank you.
Thank you, team. Good
Have a
work.
nice day.
God bless.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Brett, Member Phillips.